We have reached the halfway mark of the 2012 season and the race to the finals will now begin. The Melbourne Vixens suffered their first loss of the season on the weekend. The New South Wales Swifts making a bit of a statement. The Magic and the Firebirds also quickly gathering some momentum as I say hello and welcome to Centre Pass, the official video podcast of the ANZ Championship. Dan Ryan here alongside Sharelle McMahon. And Sharelle, we now have a new competition leader in the Adelaide Thunderbirds.
We do. The Thunderbirds sitting on top of the ladder, and as we reach the halfway mark, I guess the four looking perhaps slightly different than what we might have expected at the start of the season, and some really great performances coming through this first half of the season.
Sure, it was a huge last round. Let's have a look at all of the results from round 7 of the ANZ Championship. The Adelaide Thunderbirds kicked things off with a convincing victory over the West Coast Fever by 17 goals. A bit of an upset, the New South Wales Swifts 3-goal winners against the Melbourne Vixens in Sydney. The Mystics surviving a tough challenge from the Southern Steel, 49-45 winners. The Magic, too good for the Central Pulse by 10 goals, and the Queensland Firebirds knocking off the Canterbury Tactics in Brisbane. Sure, let's talk about the Adelaide Thunderbirds and the West Coast Fever. It was a 17-goal victory for the Thunderbirds, a big percentage boosting win which catapulted them to the #1 spot.
That's right, as we mentioned, the Thunderbirds now sitting on top of the ladder, so a big win for them really to, cement that position up there, and a great defensive game again from the Thunderbirds. We've been talking about it quite a bit this year, and they are just building and building with that strength and the pressure they put on opposition sides.
Carla Borrego's having an outstanding season up front for the Thunderbirds, 42 goals from 44 attempts at 95%. She was double marked a lot by the two defenders from the West Coast Fever. An outstanding effort from Borrego.
Incredible effort by Borrego there, and it just shows how well that understanding is developing too with the Thunderbirds. Interesting to see that Susan Furman didn't take the court for that match, particularly when Borrego was having kind of such an outstanding and dominant game.
Interesting with the West Coast Fever, Sharelle, there was so much hype around this team at the start of the season. Fair to say they probably haven't delivered on the expectation at the moment. Only 2 wins from 7 starts. They missed Catherine Cox throughout the most of that game. She left the game pretty early with a cork thigh, but it's fair to say they are struggling at the moment.
Yeah, but look, 2 wins from 7. Again, it's another bit of a one that we didn't really predict at the start of the season. It was a team I was really looking forward to seeing, with Norma Plummer over there and Catherine Cox bringing some real strength there. But I actually still think that combination in the attack line with Cox and Bassett is still taking its time to find its feet. It's a little different to what both of those players are used to. And once that clicks, though, it's going to be tough. It's still going to be tough to defend, and they can still get that happening.
They've had a lot of games on the road as well, so they'll start getting a few more home games as of now. So we'll expect them to lift in the second half of the season as we race towards the finals. A huge game, Sharelle, the Swifts against the Vixens. Not many people would have thought that this would be a victory to the New South Wales Swifts, particularly after the start the Vixens had. They led by 8 goals at quarter time.
They led by 8 goals at quarter time. That's exactly right. It was such a dominant performance in that first quarter. I guess notably Sonia McCloma was on the bench for that first quarter. Whether she was the one that made the huge difference, but certainly she had a fantastic game on a Vixens attack line, which has caused some problems for defensive lineups through the first half of the season.
Injury concerns for both teams coming into that game. Kim Green, of course, was rested last week with a foot injury. Bianca Chatfield was out with a back injury. Both players played on Sunday. Kim Green had an outstanding game, but Bianca Chatfield looked quite hampered by that back injury on and off the court throughout the game. Yeah,
she was. Bianca Chatfield obviously came up quite well with that back that she had. But as you mentioned, she was on and off, and I guess the Vixens' defensive lineup is quite used to a number of changes within a game. Coach Julie Hornweger's been quite keen to change things up because of the flexibility they've got there. So the team really should have coped with that, but really the Swifts attacking line kind of tore them apart for the most part of the last 3 quarters.
The Swifts attacking line, we've mentioned it quite a few times before, they're so unique in the fact that they have a moving, rotating circle. So often all these teams in the competition have the big post-goal shooter and the running goal attack out the front. But what we're seeing with the Swifts is 2 movers, and the form of Susan Prattley back at goal shooter is absolutely dominating defence lines. And we saw her against Mentor, she really had no answers, Jiva.
Well, Jiva, she's had such a great start to the season, and she had no intercepts for this game. And Susan Prattley shot 91%, she shot 31 goals, and she had a fantastic game. Susan Prattley is really working into that goal shooting position, and you know, she's not the dominant, tall, holding shooter that we see, but she's having a huge impact back there.
Certainly is, and Melbourne Vixens, obviously that's their first loss of the season, but the 4th consecutive win for the Swifts, so form is right on their side.
It is. Look, they're hitting great form, and the Vixens, you know, just a challenge for them now coming up in a tough match this week against the Mystics.
Let's have a look at another game, Sherelle. Waikato Bay are plenty Magic up against the Central Pulse, a 10-goal victory for the Magic, who are really starting to find their groove a bit now, so they're going to be dangerous in the second half of this year.
Well, they are. I mean, the Magic just have so much talent throughout their entire lineup, really, and so it was only going to be a matter of time before they really found their stride with that. And you know, perhaps that's starting to happen. It's still not the complete performance that I'm sure that they and their coaching staff are looking for, but it's certainly starting to build.
They beat the West Coast Fever by 16 goals in the previous round, another 10-goal victory here, so they're winning quite comfortably at the moment. Irene Van Dyke is really finding her groove, 35 goals from 37 for her at a very impressive 95%. A few injury concerns in that back line. Casey Williams was rested with ankle issues, and then we saw Leanna de Bruin come off the court with calf cramp, so they really don't want to lose those two.
Well, look, we've spoken so much about some great defensive combinations throughout the teams this season, and obviously Leanna de Bruin and Casey Williams is one of the top ones, if not the top one. And that obviously they coped with that with those players coming on and off, but a concern certainly with Casey Williams missing most of that game with an ankle injury, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that.
Yeah, for sure. Let's now have a look at how the ladder stands at the halfway mark of the competition. So interesting seeing how the teams shape up. The Adelaide Thunderbirds jump ahead of the Melbourne Vixens just on goal percentage into that pole position. The Mystics in 3rd and the Swifts rounding out the top 4. Firebirds and Magic right in touch there. But interesting, Sherelle, with the Swifts. They're in the top 4, but they've got a game behind the other teams.
Yeah, they are. A game behind, but a game in front of those who are chasing them as well. So the Swifts, as we mentioned, they are just gaining some momentum there, and not just winning against teams that are lower on the ladder, but really taking some big scalps too.
Sherelle, it was a big round of games. Who is your performer of the week for round 7?
My performer of the week is a New Zealand defender, if you can believe it. Anna Harrison, playing for the Mystics, took 9 intercepts of the game. She also had 4 deflections and some rebounds, which there weren't actually that many on offer. So Anna Harrison is just one of those defensive players who causes all sorts of havoc in the defensive lineup, and that takes her to the head of the league, leading the league in intercepts. So great game by Anna.
Pretty impressive there, Anna Harrison. My performer of the week is going to 2 goal shooters. Susan Prattley from the New South Wales Swifts for 1, 91% against Jiva Mentor. I thought it was the most dominant goal shooter performance we've seen from a mover in a long time. And also Carla Borrego for her layup, Sherelle. We haven't seen many layups from Carla Borrego, but she set Netball SA Stadium alight with her layup in the 3rd quarter.
Okay, I'm happy with you selecting 2 shooters. That's good. I love the layup. It's very exciting.
Well, it's now time to preview all of the action of round 8 of the ANZ Championship, and this is the draw for the upcoming round. The Canterbury Tactics hosting the Magic in Christchurch on Saturday. The Vixens up against the Mystics on Sunday in Melbourne. That should be a beauty. The Swifts taking on the Fever in Newcastle. The Steel against the Firebirds in Invercargill, and then the Pulse taking on the Thunderbirds in Wellington. Sherelle, some big games to talk about in this round. Let's start with, of course, the Melbourne Vixens and the Northern Mystics. 2nd versus 3rd. The Vixens definitely looking to bounce back in this one.
They will be. I mean, they will be a little bit stung by that loss up in Sydney against the Swifts, so they'll be looking to bounce back. And I know in your performer of the week you picked 2 shooters. You missed one out, and that's Catherine Latu, who last week against the Steel shot 100%. So another, perfect shooting match from her. And coming up against Jiva Mentor, we mentioned Jiva and her match against Susan Prattley. So I have no doubt that Jiva will be looking to really lift that performance from this week. So that's a contest within this game that I'm really looking forward to.
It'll be really interesting to see how the 2 coaches line up their teams. We saw for the first time last round that Debbie Fuller from the Mystics started with a set 7 and ran with it for the majority of the game. Julie Hornwig still tinkering and making wholesale changes throughout a match.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the teams this year, we've seen a lot of changes, which is perhaps something that's evolving within the ANZ Championship, but interesting to see the Mystics kind of settle on a lineup. They've got so much talent, and sometimes that's hard to find what the right mix is. But yeah, we'll wait and see if that's what they settle on again. And as you mentioned, the Vixens, what lineup will they go with? Who knows?
Well, Sherelle, another big game will be the New South Wales Swifts hosting the West Coast Fever in Newcastle. It is, of course, the first time Catherine Cox will go head-to-head against her old teammate. There'll be plenty of feeling in this match. What do you think this one will be like?
Oh, look, I think, as always against these teams, they're both great fighters. I'm really looking forward to the mid-court contest that we'll see. We've got Kim Green and Ash Brazel from the Fever coming kind of, the starting centre for the Australian Diamonds up against a young up-and-comer, and Catherine Cox, it'll be interesting to see how that goes for her. It is in Newcastle, so it's not in the big stadium of Sydney, which I'm sure a lot of Sydney fans are probably not happy with, but it'll be a tough one.
So Swifts looking for their 5th consecutive win. Fair to say, West Coast Fever's season's on the line. They were hyped up about being finals contenders this year. They really need to get this win if they're going to have any chance of cracking that top 4.
They do. They really need this win. I mean, it's been a tough start to the season for them, perhaps a little below my expectations, really. I thought that they may have had a few more wins under their belt by now, but again, they have a lot of, I keep saying it, but they've got the talent there, and if it clicks, it's going to be really tough to beat.
Another game we're going to have a look at, Sherelle. Not many people would think that the Steel versus the Firebirds would be a massive game, but the fact that they're playing in Invercargill, which is an absolute fortress for the Southern Steel team, it's going to be a huge ask for the Queensland Firebirds against the Steel on Sunday. Oh,
it is. Invercargill, what a scary place to play. The crowd down there is just amazing, and it's usually about -10. So there's a lot of things to deal with down there, and the Firebirds, they're starting to find their form, but they still haven't hit the form that we saw them in last year. So, challenge for them to really bring that together. And for the Steel, they have really had a great start to this season. And again, after only having 3 players remaining from last year, that they pulled it together extremely well, and are going to be a tough contest for the Firebirds.
Realistically, the Steel have been in every game. How close do you reckon they can go to knocking off the Firebirds?
I think the Steel have a real chance of giving the Firebirds a really great run. I think their attacking lineup in particular for the Steel have been causing lots of problems with Brown and Wilkins and the combination they've been forming. And the Firebirds' defensive lineup not gelling quite as well as what we saw last year.
Well, time now to do our tips for round 8 of the competition. We both got 4 out of 5 last week. We're deadlocked. We need to make this a bit more of an interesting competition. So who are you going to tip for round 8 of the ANZ Champs?
Okay, my tips for this week are going to be the Magic, the Vixens, the Swifts, the Firebirds and the Thunderbirds.
Okay, this is going to be an interesting round because I've gone 2 different to you, Sherelle, so I'm taking a few chances here. I'm going with the Magic, like you are, but I'm going to tip the Mystics to knock off the Vixens in Melbourne. Be huge if they do. The Swifts, I'm going with the Steel to beat the Firebirds at home, and then the Thunderbirds to beat the Pulse on Monday night. Well, that's about it for another edition of Centre Pass. Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you jump on board the ANZ Champs website. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Check out the 10 Sport website and also Sky Sport website in New Zealand. San Remo Fantasy Netball is there. Get involved. And make sure you check out your local guides for all of the broadcast details for round 8 of the ANZ Championships. Sherelle McMahon, thank you as always, and great to see you getting bigger and bigger each week.
Thank you, yes, growing steadily.
We love it. That's another edition of Centre Pass. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next week. Goodbye for now. Thank you to our sponsors, our principal sponsor,
associate sponsors,
support sponsors and suppliers,
and broadcast partners.